welcome back to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. We've got an extra special episode for you this week. A Super Sunday, I believe this is going out, and it's a huge welcome back to the Young Hearts Run Free podcast. Debbie Martin Consani, hot off the plane from the States, and we are here to speak all about it. How are we doing, Debbie?
I am great. I am very excited to speak to you both today. So thank you so much for having me on.
Well, John and I are up to idle, as you can probably imagine, and we have been for the last few weeks too, tracking your trip and your extraordinary achievements over in California. So yeah, John, aren't we just? Welcome, John, by the way. Forgot about you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. It's nice to be invited along. I'm not sure if it's your treble, Debbie, appearance on the Young Hearts Run Free. It's more than that. It should be a quadruple.
Who knows? I think I've lost
quadruple or 5. It's up there. It's up there with Western States anyway.
Yeah.
But let's dive right into the detail. The detail I want to know about, first of all, is that new super suit that you got, that core heat training. Is that a step up from the plastic sheeting in the garage? What's going on with the heat?
Yeah, I mean, it was a bit of a combo. So I think it was kind of well documented when I was training for Badwater that I had a treadmill in the garage surrounded by tarpaulin, and I had 3 heaters, which was great because it got the temperature in the garage up to like high 30s. I think in the summer of 2022, I think the highest degree I had running out with my treadmill was about 8 degrees because I run early in the morning. So, I mean, that served me well, but I was basically winging it. I had no idea what my core temperature was, what my heart rate was, what kind of impact it had on my training, whether it was beneficial, whether it was helping. I do believe it did. But obviously now the technology has changed and there is this new core sensor system, which is basically a little clip that you attach to a heart rate monitor or your sports bra or basically to your skin, which is linked to your watch and your heart rate monitor. It's all very complex. It sometimes takes about 10 minutes to get everything to sync before you started running. And that basically monitored how heat adapted I was using your skin temperature and your core temperature. So you basically go through the motions from like being a heat rookie at the 2% after my first one, right up to the heat champion, which is 90% above. Yeah, it's a bit, I think a lot of people are using it. There's had its critics on social media. Some people have been very vocal about overtraining and exertion and it not being beneficial and it's not being monitored. But I used it. For me, I think it helped keep me motivated, albeit I became slightly obsessed with this little core score. So yeah, I mean, it's new technology, it's evolving, people are using it. As I say, some people are dead against it, but I think it really did help. I had no problems with the heat during the race. Even at some of the hottest points, I never felt like I was overheating. I had various other issues, but heat probably wasn't one of them. So yeah, I found it beneficial for sure.
Okay. Sales are
I mean, I think a lot of people are using it who are not doing hot races because they think the benefit of heat training. I'm not sure I would do that, to be honest. I think it does take a lot out of you. But I was also combining the treadmill training with saunas as well, so you can manually upload to the app anything you do in the saunas, which will give you another heat adaptive score as well.
Just for clarity, full transparency, you weren't wearing the suit in the sauna.
I was not wearing the suit in the sauna. I didn't even wear it outside.
That was my next question. Was it an interior thing?
Oh, it was absolutely an indoor thing. I think my neighbours must have been thinking I was building a meth lab in my garage as I wandered across the back door in my sauna suit.
Brilliant. Breaking Bad.
Yeah, exactly.
Walter White there.
Exactly. And Bears Den.
And wait, but for that, have you a coach just now, Debbie?
Yeah, Eddie Sutton. has been helping me, which has been great.
Okay. She of Tea and Trails fame.
Of your competitor podcast.
No such thing.
Yes, she runs my second favourite podcast. And I tell her that.
Very well put. And how's that relationship been, especially
it's great. I've gone full circle because Eddie was my very first coach way back in 2015. But yeah, no, it's been absolutely great. I think, she's really helped me with the HIIT training and when I was training for London as well. So yeah, I kind of was coachless for a little bit and then I felt a little bit lost. Like people always ask me, like, why do you have a coach when you're actually a running coach as well? And for me, it's just one less thing that I need to think about. And I think it's good having that accountability as well. But yeah, she's been absolutely fantastic during the whole phase as well.
Brilliant. And massive congrats to Eddie as well. Let's congratulate the coach too for the athlete's performance and achievement. So well done. You mentioned Badwater, Debbie.
Yeah.
But that's your name. It was your name, Badwater Debbie. But was there massive lessons learned from that you took into Western States?
I mean, it's completely different. I think with Badwater, it's a full-on assault of heat from start to finish. There's no give in it. Whereas Western States, it's kind of mostly pockets that are really hot. I mean, it is always quite warm, but there's various other factors in Western States. Heat's the only challenge because 30 miles of it you run in what they call the high country. So you're over 7,000 feet for pretty much the first 30 miles and then you come down and then the second section is known as the canyons and that's where it's like super hot. But it's hot. I mean, it starts in the Olympic Valley at 5 o'clock in the morning. So it is fairly fresh, but you heat up as soon as the sun comes up really. So when you're in the high country, you've got a mix of heat and altitude. And then when you drop down into what they call the canyons, that's where it's like 40 plus degrees, but it's 40 plus degrees with absolutely no air. So I think there was a lot of times in the race where I had to remind myself that although it was challenging and it was tough, I've definitely done harder things, and Badwater is by far the hardest thing I've ever done.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Can I just rewind us a wee bit in terms of the Western States? It wasn't your first time putting in for the ballot this year.
No, it took me 9 years. I think it was 9 years, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, and there was a COVID year, and then I took a bye 1 year as well. So you're allowed to take one bye where you keep your tickets, but you can still roll over into the next one. So I took a bye the year after Badwater, because obviously I'd just been out in the States, and as you remember, Cairn was still having his treatment for his accident and he couldn't wear shorts for 2 years, and so I didn't want to run the risk of having to go and do Western States when I wasn't mentally, emotionally or physically prepared to do it. So I took the bye that year, and so yeah, it took me 9 years. But I had many conversations with people out in the race as well, and the vast majority of people were round about the same. So at the race briefing, the race is limited to 360 or 380 or something. I think the people who have the overall say, or the national park governing bodies, whoever they answer to, have always limited that number. I think it's been that number for a very long time. So at the race briefing, they said like there was only about 60 odd people who were coming back to repeat the race. So, your top 10s, sponsored athletes or people who were lucky enough to get in again, but 300 people in the race were doing it for the first time. So the vast majority of people I spoke to were definitely like 5+ years of trying to get into it.
This takes me to our secret question, not expecting it so early in the day. Just that we're here, so we asked Karen Nichol to give us a question for Debbie. If she was able to...
Not doing a backyard.
That was the second one, so that's that scrubbed. Right. If Debbie was able to trade the experience she had at Western States for getting in through the ballot 9 years earlier, would she take it? Or did the benefits from the years of our experience and being a little wiser, stand her in good stead?
I would have loved to have done it 9 years ago. Yeah, I mean, when I first signed up or started the ball rolling, I was in my early 40s, and it was round about the time where I was my fittest, my fastest. I was running 100-mile trail races in 17 hours. So yeah, I would have loved to have gone and seen what I could have done on the course. Now I've just turned 50. I'm a completely different age category. I'm a different phase in where I am in my running journey. I've definitely coming down the other side of the mountain. I've loved to have seen what I could have done. But even still, I think with a race like Western States, you need to spend time on the course. You need to earn your stripes out there. And, just to do it flash and to do it the first time, it just throws up challenges that are kind of completely different if you don't know the course. I mean, yeah, the people who are doing their best runs are the people who have been out there and they know what's expected of it. So even still back then, I was a full-time working mum with a young child, so I wouldn't have had the opportunity to go out and run the course, but I think I would have been in a completely different place. But you know what? It doesn't matter, because my time wasn't then, my time was now. And I went out there knowing that I was going to do the absolute best that I could on the day.
Way too early for me to be getting emotional. Way too early in this conversation, man. You recently posted on social media, Debbie, a list of some of your achievements and an Instagram reel or a story. In Western States, you say this is now your time to have done that.
Yeah.
Where does Western States rank in that list of achievements? And it's quite maybe a difficult one to answer. I know it's something you've been chasing for the last 9 years to get in, and to get the opportunity to do it. It's brilliant, because some folk might never get the opportunity to do it. So, but where does Western States rank in that list of races?
It's definitely right up there, and I don't know whether it's there. It's not up there from like a personal performance.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's been races that I have felt a million times better and done so much better. But I think in terms of being able to do that iconic race, and being so blessed and grateful to have that chance to do that, yeah, I mean, it's definitely right up there with some of the best for sure. And I think maybe because it's like globally well known, and like you say, they only let in a few hundred people a year. But yeah, I mean, it's a phenomenal race. Like, it's like a well-oiled machine. They do everything so well. They've got 300 runners. They've got 1,500 volunteers, which is nuts, because you don't see 1,500 volunteers, but obviously you see them across the course. You go into an aid station and, you've almost been allocated a person to look after you. So someone will come and like fill your bottles and do everything for you and make sure you've got ice. And, you go through like the checkpoint and there's always someone there that's to help you. Whereas sometimes, like, if you go into a checkpoint in the UK, it's kind of like the way it should be. You should be self-sufficient. You go in and do everything for yourself. But yeah, they seem to have like a one-on-one type thing out on the course. And that's like the aid stations out with that you have your crew. But yeah, it's phenomenal. It feels like, everybody knows it's a massive global event. Everybody follows it on YouTube. Everybody knows about it. But when you go there, it's got a really nice local community feel. Like, everyone is so friendly and so kind. And it's not about, the Killians and the Abbeys, the people that are doing amazing. It's like, it's about everyone. So, you probably heard about Golden Hour, which is the last hour of the race, where I think they say like most of the runners come in. It's super busy in Golden Hour. So between that 29, 30 hours, and everybody comes out, like all the ultra superstars are all there cheering everybody in, and it's just electric. The atmosphere is amazing. So yeah, it's a phenomenal experience, because what they put on out there is just second to none for sure.
You're no dousing the flames for John and I here in terms of our ambitions to even be one of the 1,500 volunteers. I can't believe that. It's like a 1,500 volunteers for 300 people racing.
Yeah.
You do wonder how many people, say they just said, it's unlimited entries this year. You wonder how many people would be on the start line. Just
yeah. But
I know
the infrastructure is just not set up for like more than 300 people for starters. It's mostly single track, so at the beginning it's quite busy. After you go up what they call the escarpment, where you've seen like literally hundreds of people up there, it's kind of rolling single track for pretty much most of it. So I think if they had more than 300 people there, it would massively take away from a runner experience as well.
Yeah.
I think they've found like a really nice number that probably works for them as well. But also from a runner experience, yourself, if you've been in a race where they've jammed hundreds of people more into what the actual route can deal with, it just, you just come away with it like almost like what was the point? Yeah. So I mean it is capped, and whether or not they would do that. But I actually was running with the assistant race director for quite a few miles quite early on in the race. I didn't know she was the assistant race director until I'd been like chatting to her. So it was great. I was kind of getting some of the inside scoop on it. And things like it's really good value for money, and they try to keep at it, even though that how much it costs doesn't really work for the amount of numbers that they have in the race. So they rely quite a lot on sponsorship and stuff. But it was really nice to speak to her about it. And obviously she's heard about all the races in the UK because they're all the qualifying events. And so I was trying to get her to come and do the West Island Way. I said I would crew for her.
Of course.
They were doing quite a bit of fundraising actually on the YouTube feed. There was people donating quite a lot of money as well. So obviously it's very well recognised and respected. And I think
she told me, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say this, but she told me like the buckle and like having all the engraving on the buckle actually costs more than the race entry. So even things like
But they care about that. They care about that as well because
they really do.
Because that's a memento for life, obviously, and you now have one, which is brilliant. We've spoken to Dylan Bowman and we've spoken to Billy Yang, who are part of the team, the sort of social side of it, and the media team. They do that, and that's really ramped up in the last few years. The one thing though that hasn't changed is the course itself. So, was there a bit of the course? Let's get to the nitty-gritty bit. Was there a bit you felt really tested on?
Was anything about the course that made me feel challenged or tested? I think personally I really struggled out there with sickness pretty much from about mile 30 till about, I think I stopped being sick about mile 80. So probably that big chunk in the middle. It was nothing about the course that was challenging. I mean, there's nothing there that's not what you could find in Scotland other than the heat. So I mean, the course was way more technical than I expected it to be. I kind of expected kind of compressed, dusty trails, whereas there was a lot of sections that were quite rutted and rocky. But there was no part of the trail that I haven't experienced or run on before. But I think from a person, the way that I felt was probably the most challenging part for me.
And just staying on the course, and you said that when you went to the top of the escarpment, and I seen a post for you just around about all these sort of places that sound like mythical sort of places that you've dreamt about. What was it like actually? Was it like out of body experience almost to start with?
I think, I just had to remind myself, like going up the escarpment, like you could hear the noise before you even got there. And it was just amazing, and it's kind of like got to the top, and my hero, Sally McRae, was there. And I literally just pounced on her. I was like, oh my God, and I hugged her. And she's probably thinking that was totally inappropriate. But no, she was super friendly and super nice. And I was like, oh my God, I'm just running up Western States and Sally McRae standing there cheering for us. But there were so many people there. And it was kind of like one of those wow moments, because like the whole time I was on the treadmill in the garage with my heat suit, I was just watching YouTube films of Western States. It was a full immersive experience. So if there's a Western States film on YouTube out there, I've probably watched it. So it was really good to see, like following other people's races that have been on films and then actually being that main character. So yeah, it was quite phenomenal. But there's loads of like, I mean, as you said, my post, like you run down Forest Hill, which is one of the main checkpoints, and going across Rocky Chucky, and the river, things like No Hands Bridge, all those things that I've passed with other people on YouTube, and then to actually be able to do it, it was a real pinch yourself moment for sure.
And all heading towards that track at the high school. We'll come to that, because that's quite a, oh man, that's one of these pinch me moments too, to go in there and to do that. I would go back to the feeling sick for 50 miles bit. That's a detail people want. So let's lead into that with your nutrition and hydration. What was Debbie Martin Consani using?
Oh, the usual shit show, John. I know I wasn't going to eat anything or chew anything, so I was trying to stick with liquids and gels, which worked fine for about the first 30 miles. And that's when I got to the first checkpoint, aid station, to meet my crew. And that was the first point that I was sick. And I don't know whether it was just like the stopping, that kind of like that sudden jolt, but it had started to heat up. And I would try and just keep fluids and gels down, and it would just, I mean, I don't even know where it was coming from. It was just like projectile. And I always seem to do it like the most public places, like at aid stations and then running through car parks. And I just couldn't keep anything down. So yeah, there was a big chunk of it there. I was basically running on empty, and just trying to drink things like Coke and ginger ale. But yeah, another classic moment where I look back and I think, how in God's name did I put one foot in front of the other for that length of time? But yeah, I mean, it was challenging, and in hindsight, there's so many things that I could have done to fix it or make me feel better. But at the time, I just unravel and just bury myself, but somehow keep moving forward. But the sickness has just been quite a big problem for me over the last few years. And it's not even just like heat. You know, I was the same in Lakeland last year as well. So yeah, I think I've got to the point where I don't really find any joy in ultra running, and questioning whether I have a future in doing that. I kept saying to Marco, I'm never ever doing an ultra, and he's like, yeah, I think I've heard this one before. And I was like, no, I am adamant.
Well, must have been like Groundhog Day for Marco.
Yeah, Marco's like that. All right, okay, here we go. Yeah.
So, but you mentioned up to 80 miles, and I was going to just say, did something happen with the weather at 80 miles? But that last, so what happened for the last 20?
It probably cooled down a wee bit. I think Marco kept saying to me that I had the same problem in Badwater, and then when it got to the night time and it cooled down, I kind of stopped being sick. But I think it was really, there was nothing else to come. But I had wee pockets where I felt really good, and then I would just hit a dark point. At no point did I stop like going forward. I think I spent far too much time in aid stations trying to kind of sort myself out. But at no point was I ever going to quit or ever not going to finish. I think it was just tough. It was tough for me. I just had to keep moving. I had one shot to do this race, and nothing was going to get in the way of me in that buckle. Physically, I was low on energy, but there was nothing technically or medically wrong with me. I didn't have any mechanical issues, or my feet were a bit battered at the end of it, but whose feet weren't battered at the end of it? But, I just kept thinking anything short of stopping here would just be a massive shit quit, because there was nothing wrong with me. But yeah, it just made it a little bit harder and made it a little bit slower. But I think going into the race, I didn't really I'm not going to lie to you, I wanted to get under 24 hours. I wanted that silver buckle, but it didn't happen, and that's fine, because at the end of the day, I was just like, I just need to finish this race because I've got one shot to do this. I don't have 9 years of qualifying races left in me. So it's kind of now or never. And I just kept reminding myself of that.
Brilliant. Jilly McGill's got some stuff for your feet. Fleecy Web, it's called. She mentioned it once, I think. Stephen, sorry.
Yeah, my feet weren't like blistered and broken like Gillian's were. I mean, it's well documented. I think she had a blister on every single toe and heel and sole. Mine just felt like really battered. I preferred like lightweight shoes. I prefer to feel the ground, to feel the earth. I didn't expect it to be as rocky as what it was. I did have more cushion shoes in my drop bag, and my plan at some point was to change into those shoes. But because I was like super low in energy, I wasn't picking up my feet properly. And I thought if I put something on that's got a higher stack, I'm just going to fall over. And it was kind of like, do I stick with the battered feet or do I get a battered face? And I thought, do you know what? I'm just going to have to suck it up and just deal with the shoes. But yeah, my feet were sore, but they weren't like to the extent that Gillian's were. I think she was like moving on bleeding stumps. But mine just felt more battered than actually having some kind of abrasions.
Whilst we're on shoes and stuff, and we heard that Badwater, you had white leggings. Remember, they had the big explosion in their sales.
Yeah.
We were somewhere. Was there any particular specific kit choices that were for Western states?
Really, I don't think that you don't have to deal with the same level of heat. And I mean, the sun is super, super strong. It's like a different kind of sun they have there. It's like pierces you. I think the UV index was like the highest it could possibly be on most days. But no, I didn't really have. I think just having like the sun off your neck and your face, and having the usual ice bandanas. But I had like lightweight shorts. I had a white vest. I think everyone was pretty much wearing light colours. I had the sleeves that I could put ice down. It wasn't too dissimilar to what you would use on a normal trail, but you do need those accessories that you can deal with heat and ice. So yeah, the white leggings did not make a return. They didn't even make the suitcase. I'm sorry to say they didn't make the cut.
I did see, was it a Nike vest that was kind of trending? It was like it had holes in it, almost like somebody had stuck matchsticks, like burning matches.
Like someone put a hole punch.
Exactly.
I get the first time I saw it, I thought someone taking their hole punch, because I think, who was it, Jim Walmsley or someone who used to do that back in the day with a crop top and the holes in it. But yeah, I think there's like, some of the Salomon ones had like vests that had like inbuilt chamois type thing that could almost hold the moisture in the, I mean, so some of them, yeah, there's definitely been some thought put in there, but I didn't have. I just had an ice bandana and I put ice in my sleeves. I think there was one point I lay down in a river that I crossed over. But I didn't feel like the heat particularly bothered me. There was one climb that you go up Devil's Thumb, which took a little bit of my soul by the time I got up there. It's quite a steep climb, and it was in like when you come out the canyon, so that's like the hottest part of the course. So the time I got to that aid station, I was like, I had a can of Sprite and a can of Coke or something. It was all I was dreaming about on that climb, was just getting a can of Coke. So that point was really hot. I remember being in the aid station. There was a lovely volunteer called Dennis who was telling me he was going to give me my buckle at the end and trying to get me out the checkpoint, because I must have been like totally wasted. And he was like, she's going to hang about a little bit too long here, so I'm getting her moving. So I left there, and I think because I'd got there in such a daze and then left in such a daze, I'd left without any ice, which was like, I noticed about half mile down the road, I was like, oh my God, I've not got any ice and I'm just going to go into the next canyon. So I was kind of a bit concerned about that, but I was actually all right. I didn't think the heat was that bad. I think I had bigger fish to fry, to be honest. I had more things to deal with than the heat. But in terms of kit, I didn't really have anything particularly special.
Might be sorry, Stephen, go.
No, like those canyons bit where it's like most intense heat. It's like also technical during that part as well, is it? Was there any of those groomed sort of paths that were maybe in your head, the sort of dusty, compressed trails?
Yeah, there was.
Or...
Yeah. So most of the big climbs and the big descents are switchbacks. So apart from the climb, I mean, even the one up Devil's Thumb was still a switchback, but it was still really steep. I've heard a lot of people on podcasts and, on YouTube and stuff who were surprised about how steep some of the course was. So maybe I was going into it thinking, oh my God, I'm going to be like really surprised. But I don't think there's anything in it that's outwith climbs that we've done, like Monroe's and Lakeland and all those kind of courses. There was nothing that I thought, wow, this is insanely steep. I mean, there was bits that were steep, but I wasn't surprised by any. And I don't know whether I had that preconceived concept that I might be surprised and therefore I wasn't. But yeah, there's a lot of good running in it as well. There's a lot of kind of long flat sessions. I know it's like predominantly downhill, but I swear to God, I don't remember any downhills. But yeah, it mostly kind of like some of the... Sorry?
Downhill. We've all seen the elevation.
Yeah,
it's advertised
exactly.
How many feet a climb has it?
I think they say it's at 18,000, and then I think it's 23,000 downhill.
Okay.
But yeah, one of my other problems was because I kept throwing everything up. I wasn't really having any much salt and electrolytes in my body, so I was like proper cramping at bits, which is not something I've really experienced before. I mean, I think when I got to Forest Hill, I was trying to change my socks, and I basically couldn't do it because my legs were like going everywhere, and I couldn't get my legs to stay peace. But I think like I had cramp in my quads and my adductors. And I think some of the downhills, I felt the effects of the cramp rather than the muscle pain from the downhills. I've done quite a lot of strength training in this last few years. And obviously I was really focusing on steep ascents and steep downhills to try and smash my quads before I'd got there. So I think from a physical point of view, I felt mostly okay. My feet were a bit sore. Not going to lie, the impact of running that amount and going through various things like altitude and the heat and the cramp and some of the rocky single track terrain had definitely taken its toll. But from a physical point of view, I felt actually not that bad. I just had no energy. There was just nothing. So things just felt really hard. It's like bonking for pretty much 50 miles.
But that just sounds, what I'm hearing though, is has been good preparation, that with the heat training that you've done. And you've been speaking about even the mental side of stuff, and that's watching all the videos, listening to all the podcasts, to being immersed totally in it and not being surprised. Yeah, there's going to be climbing, but what you can sort of visualize what the climbs are going to be like by watching these videos and taking that on board. So that to me is all about the preparation. Another bit of preparation, I know you're a big fan of, a champion of, the yoga and the flexibility. How much has that played a part in your prep, but also your recovery?
Yeah, I haven't really done that much yoga in the last year. I'm sorry. This is what happens when I didn't read your questions, John. Yeah, it's something I'm 100% getting back into now. You know what it's like when you finish your race, you've imaginarily got all this amazing time that you're going to do all those things that you've put off for months. Yeah, my body's definitely feeling the impact of it. I think this last year when we moved house and we had a lot of renovation stuff to do and things just fell by the wayside. And you know what it's like when you get out of a routine and you almost lose that. So yeah, I'm super keen to get back into that. But my focus really has been running and strength training over the last year, which is great because I do feel like, my body feels strong for 50. I don't feel fast for 50, but I do feel strong. And I do think that's definitely helps, and especially in things like Western States with all the downhill. But yeah, I need to get back into trying to get a little bit more mobile for sure.
For 10, 11
There's only
days.
so many hours in a day. Sorry.
But do you know what? I think, I say that to people I coach, like, you don't need to eat an elephant. You're not a professional athlete. I think, in an ideal world, you'd be doing your plyometrics and your Pilates and your foam rolling and your daily massages. And do you know what? You just can't do everything. So sometimes you've just got to prioritize a few things and do them well rather than spread yourself too thinly. But yeah, that just fell by the wayside, unfortunately.
That makes perfect sense, though. Prioritising what you can do when you can.
Yeah.
So we're 10, 11 days post work all day. How are you feeling? How's your body feeling now?
When I finished, I think mostly just like the bits that had cramped really badly. I don't know if you know, like if you cramp during the night or your calf or something cramps during the night and you feel that after effect, that burn for the next day. So like my quads and my adductors definitely felt sore for probably about 2 days after it. So after I finished the race, we stayed in Auburn that night, which is where the race finishes, and then we went to Yosemite the next day. And the first day that we arrived in Yosemite, my poor son was helping me step off pavements. Everything that was slightly downhill felt really sore. But then the next day we went for a wee walk and I felt okay. And then, we had a couple of hikes in there. We went up El Capitan, which is a 16-mile round trip, and yeah, I felt okay. I felt pretty tired, but we were just hiking and we were just taking it easy. And when you stop at the top of El Capitan for lunch, it's pretty amazing. But yeah, I think I recovered okay. I mean, I've still got the long-lasting effects of the fatigue. I'm not going to shake that for quite some time, and then obviously traveling home on Sunday, and it's 24 hours door to door from Yosemite back to Glasgow. Yeah, I felt like I'd been absolutely battered when I returned to work on Monday. But I've done a few runs. I'm definitely not pulling up the trees, but I don't feel there's anything significantly wrong with me. I'm just going to take it easy for a few weeks. But it was really nice to be out running along the Thames this morning because it's super hot down here. So it's quite nice just to be out there for running for just the joy of it, and not running in a heat suit and a down jacket with heaters. Yeah.
I did notice it's warm back home. I'm on holiday just now and it's warm
just
here.
Loving this Muscle Beach thing you've got going on here.
I've still to go and do my run this morning to earn my calories for the day. You know how it is.
You don't need to earn them, Stevie.
I do, man. Trust me, the amount I'm packing away. But it's almost like that when you get home and everybody's complaining about it being mega hot, and you've been to someplace mega hot, you, and you're like, oh no, this is actually pretty cool.
Yeah, you're like, this is fine. It's fine, especially in the morning for sure. But I think it's quite hot out there now. But yeah, I think like when you go to places like the States, they've got like aircon and they're all kind of built up for it. It's not like the UK where our buildings are built to retain heat and the travel system doesn't have any aircon. So yeah, it's just a different kind of heat in the UK, isn't it?
I'm taking us back to the Western States now in terms of so 80 miles where you stop being sick and then 20-mile dash for home. he says with his tongue in his cheek. And that was at nightfall. So just for listeners, the race starts at 5 a.m.
Yeah.
So you're overnight, full overnight for the Saturday. So it starts on the Saturday morning, night, Sunday morning, and that was when you were not being sick, shall we say? You're not being sick spell. That last 20 miles where you're making for Auburn, and is that when you cross the Rucky-Chucky River?
Yeah, you cross the Rucky-Chucky at 7 to 8 miles.
Okay, so talk to us about crossing the Rucky-Chucky River, because there's some famous things happened there in the past, and they must have been flashing through your head.
There was. I watched a video of Jim Walmsley getting swept away. I was like, I think they've learned from that. So basically, anyone who has to cross has to hold with two hands. I feel like they were kind of doing the two hands things, like I was doing with my son at the railings at Yosemite, where I'm like, but yeah, they make sure everyone's kind of holding on tight. And I think the water, some years they've had to use a boat to cross it because the water's been quite high. I think it probably was like waist deep for most people, and they've got plenty of people at along the rope to make sure that everyone is safe. But yeah, I think a few people have been swept away, but I think it's because they're a bit gallous crossing and not taking the proper precautions of holding onto the rope. Maybe they're doing it too fast or just trying to be a bit flash.
And Jim tried to swim it, didn't he, when he got?
Did he try and swim it and then anyway, he ended up down the river quite a bit. So yeah, I was making sure that I was safe there. But it was amazing, like walking down the steps and you're just like, oh my God, I'm actually crossing Rocky Tucky.
It's one of these moments, isn't it, in the race? It's one of these moments in the race that you dream about, and here I am. I'm actually doing it. And you actually stopped, and there's a wee bit of, you're pointing at somebody, one of the helpers in the river as you're crossing as well. So that's a nice, nice wee thing to share.
This kid, like, he was helping people across. So yeah, what a hero. They were all standing in there, and it's, it wasn't cold. It was fresh, for sure. It was a nice wee wash, actually, taking off some of that dust off your legs. But they were all standing there in wetsuits helping people across. So yeah, pretty phenomenal.
First time ever this year as well, they had somebody in a snorkel and goggles going across. Don't know what that was about, but anyway, maybe hey, they got across.
I think we'll call it a marketing gimmick.
Okay, we'll go with that. But like, you come out the river, you've got 20 and a bit miles to go. You then, let's fast forward a wee bit, going across No Hands Bridge, and that's pretty much bringing you home, isn't it? You're not. How far have you got to go from No Hands Bridge?
Maybe 4 miles, 3 miles, 3 miles. I was going to say 3 or 4 miles for sure. Yeah.
How's Debbie Martin Consani feeling at that point?
Absolutely fucked. Nothing left in me. I was like, so Marco joined me at Forest Hill at 62 miles because he was going to be my pacer. Just support runner. I don't think he was actually pacing me. And he was either going to join there or at Rocky Tucky. And I think by the time I got to Forest Hill, I was feeling quite shit. And he decided to join from there. So Marco hasn't done any really long runs since last January. So I don't think he'd factored in the fact that he was going to do 38 miles. But, I'm quite small. Marco's quite tall. So I was running my little heart out and he's walking behind me. And I was like, I think he was trying, like, I don't want to be like totally patronizing by walking behind, but if I start running, I'm running up her heels. So yeah, at that point, I was just, I kept trying to run. I know I was running slowly, but I just thought, if you get into that habit of just walking, you never get running again, and it just becomes a death march. So when I was leaving aid stations, I was going into aid stations, I was trying to like get fuel. So whether it would just be water, I was obsessed with iced water. So I would probably like stay in aid stations for too long, and then your body just seizes up and you've got to get going again. So even though like I wasn't running at any kind of running pace, I was just being really conscious. I wanted to go through the motions of running because I didn't want to turn it into a death march. So there was bits where I could probably walk a wee bit faster than I was running, but I just wanted to keep my body in that running process so that I could keep going forward and not just walking it out. So yeah, I was still running, but it was pretty slow. Yeah.
Say a wee bit about your crew, your support crew. You mentioned Marco, but there was others as well. Who else was involved?
Yeah, so Marco was there by default because he has to be, right?
Yeah.
And he loves a free holiday. And so he was there, and Lex Smelling, one of my friends who had done the race a few years before, but unfortunately had to stop. And I think she was quite keen just to get back out into States. She was going to have a holiday at Yosemite and meet one of her friends, and then was coming out to crew for me. And then Cairn, again, by default, poor kid just gets dragged along. And he reminded me afterwards that he doesn't really enjoy just going out and watching me spew for 24 hours. So he was there. They were all just like a great help. You don't get to see them very often. There's only 5 points where you can see them, but they do have like oh God, I don't know how many aid stations. I want to say 15, 20. They're not that far apart. So you don't really go more than 5 or 6 miles without having an aid station where you can fill up your bottles. The aid stations have everything. So gels, fruits, crisps, Coke, ice. So you can do it quite well unsupported. Yeah.
This is something I've learned since chatting with you today, Debbie, that I thought your crew were with you a lot more than that. But earlier on, you were saying that it feels like you're almost getting allocated one-on-one. Somebody's coming when you arrive at an aid station. Somebody's there for your care, for your attention, to look after you. But and you just said there that you think it should be 5 places that your crew. I thought it was much more than that. So I've learned that. Yeah. So that's where the 1,500 volunteers come in.
Yeah.
So there's not that many crew access points, and I think it basically boils down to the infrastructure of access of how you can get into the course, because they need to have a lot of people with a lot of cars being able to get there and having parking facilities. I don't know if there's any other points on the course that people can get to. I know some runners have 2 different crews, which means they can go to different checkpoints because they can get there at different times. But I think I only had 5 spots, maybe 4, that my crew could get to. So the first time that I saw my crew, for example, was 30 miles into the race. And then the next point was maybe 18 miles away. So there is quite a long time where you're out without your crew, but they do have aid stations. Like I think the furthest you go without an aid station is about 5 or 6 miles. So they do have a lot of aid stations where you can go in, and they have everything. So they have fruits, waters, gels, juice, Coke, ice, everything that you need. And as I said, the volunteers, there's hundreds of volunteers at each checkpoint been there to help you. So you can go through a checkpoint, you can pick up whatever you want, and then they'll douse you with water, they'll fill up all your neckies with ice. So it's almost like a little mini crew that just people you don't know.
Friends you haven't made yet. Yeah.
Exactly. So as a race that you could do uncrewed, I do think it would just be a little bit harder, because although they have everything there, it's just taking away that moral support, and it's almost like you're running towards people that are going to help you and look after you. There is quite a few people who do it unsupported, but I'd say the vast majority come with crews, and they come with an entourage. Yeah.
Big but it's just
it's just it's supersized my crew. But yeah, I think there's a lot of people at the aid station, the crew stations.
I've watched a couple of YouTube videos post race, and exactly what you're saying. It's like there's like 20 people in a crew chasing, bringing the runner in, and it's almost like they're aiming for that F1 pit stop thing to be happening.
Yeah, I've seen some of them. Yeah,
but there's actually too many of them to make that happen efficiently. There's far too many people involved. Sorry, he speaks like he knows what he's talking about. Take us to the track. Right, you're approaching that track. That looks like a wee bit of an uphill on the road up to the track. Does it feel like that?
Yeah. So when you hit the last timing point, which is Roby Point, I think it's like 1.2 miles or something. So from No Hands Bridge, I think it's predominantly uphill to Roby Point, or at least for me, it felt like a mountain. And then when you get to Roby Point, there's people there, and then there's quite a lot of crowds there, and all people's crews come out as well. So if you're round about people who've got like 10, 15 crews, it's almost like you're running in little mini groups. So yeah, it's a short uphill from when you leave Roby Point, and then it's pretty much downhill until the track. But there's loads of people out in the street, and everyone's cheering for you, and there's a film crew on you, and someone's telling you you're live on YouTube. So you've got to like massively ham it up, haven't you? You're like smiling, living your best life, thinking you're actually running at a normal pace. But yeah, I mean, it's electric. You've seen it on the track. So to be there is just phenomenal. I've probably a little bit wasted and probably didn't appreciate the full experience of it. But yeah, it's just amazing. It's like the best atmosphere ever.
And for you, that time of day was Sunday morning.
Yeah, so maybe 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
Which,
Yeah.
yeah. So daylight, that's what I'm thinking. I've seen the.
Yeah,
what
it
time
gets
did it-
light maybe
Light.
just after 5.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, it was daylight. So it was quite nice to finish in daylight.
And busy. That's a busy track. There's, like you've just said, there's film crews, there's people with gimbals running with people. I mean, you see it and it's a bit crazy. Who was the girl on the podium who was sick just at the very end? It was on.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah. So I think she was second or third. John, did you see that video? Or she was just running towards the track and she was.
Oh, I saw her. That's like literally the most badass thing I've seen. I think her name's Marianne. I think she's French because she was like désolé, désolé, but she was pelting it. Meanwhile, like just vomiting up all this liquid.
That's the one.
Yeah, in my head, that's what I looked like, but it wasn't.
The finish of dreams, man. But there was lots of people invested in the dot watching for Western States, and you being one of the main reasons. And then I suppose
I mean, I doubt that, John, but thanks.
No, well, for the people in my circle, most definitely you were. Most definitely you were. And I was watching your dot. That's all that matters, baby, right? That's all that matters.
Thanks, John. Thanks.
But I was just imagining what it must have felt like to be running up, and you're saying you were feeling kind of wasted and all that. But again, it's one of these moments in ultra running runners. It's like a mecca to get to Placer High School, to get to that track. One of these things that you've dreamt about. And also, not just that, you're now leaving 96, 97, 98 miles behind you. You're nearly done. This is it, the achievement of a dream. How did that feel when you got on that track and you've got less than a lap to go?
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. I remember running down into the track and like there was a girl at the side and she shouted, "No miles to go." And I was just like,
Brilliant.
Oh my God, that's like the best thing I've heard all day. And then I think Kieran was behind me filming, and there's a bit where Marco, like, we're running towards the track, and he kind of like taps me, like almost to direct me in the direction. I nearly decked it, and I was like, oh my God, can you imagine like running on the track and falling? But yeah, I think like the camera guy who was following me around, he was like, he was just asking me some questions, and I was like, I've watched this on YouTube so many times and I can't believe I'm here. And he was like, yeah, but you're moving really well. You're going really fast. And I was like, mate, there's 2 cameras on me. Of course I'm moving really fast. Suddenly you've got this big dose of adrenaline. But yeah, it was pretty amazing. And then you turn the corner and you see the finish sign that you've seen a million times on live streams. But yeah, I mean, there's obviously I would love to have been out on the course beforehand to see it and to recce it, because I'm a huge fan of a recce. I think for me, I find it like mentally comforting and reassuring that I know what's coming up. But then there's bits where you get there for the first time and you see something for the first time, and it's just, you have that magic during the race. So yeah, just turning that corner on the track and just seeing that Western States sign ahead of me was it was quite amazing.
And been crossing the finish line, obviously, and that, okay, it's done. What's then the overriding emotion? I think you've described there, but what's then the process? What happens? You get your buckle right away?
No. You get a medal. So I think everyone who finishes gets a medal, because obviously people still come in after the 30-hour cutoff. So I think everybody gets a medal, and then they have a presentation a couple hours later. So they've got that time because they engrave everyone's buckle, which is another beautiful touch. And yeah, they present. It's quite similar to the West Highland Way, except it's a couple hours after the race where they present every single person with their buckle, which is really nice, but also quite torturous when you've been sitting about for hours and you smell like a goat. But yeah, most people just go on and sit on the track. So I finished and I went and sat on the track, and poor Marco, who just run 38 miles off the cuff, like no planning, no idea he was doing that. and he was just like lying on the grass sleeping, and the medics came up and they were like fussing over him lying on the grass. And I was like, I'm the runner, that's my pacer. Yeah. So yeah, I only think he wanted to do like the full duration with me because he thought, right, if I do my long run today, I can relax for the next week. So it was nothing to do with the fact that he was keeping me safe. It was all preconceived. Yeah.
I get that logic.
Yeah, exactly.
For somebody with a similar dream to yours, Debbie, who would like to be doing, but they've not even thought about it, they're not in the ballot, they've not got any sort of qualifying races yet. What advice would you give somebody who's dreaming about running Western States?
I think you've got to do the qualifying races. I would say to anyone, like, I can say this now because I've already run it and I don't care how many tickets are in the ballot. I think if you've ever got any aspirations of running Western States at any point in your life and you have a qualifying race, then get your name in the hat. I didn't think it would take me as long as it did to get in. And I have been quite fortunate that I haven't done races just to get qualifiers, which I think is a hard thing to do. And I also find it really disrespectful to race directors if people are doing their races just to do another race. And I have been quite fortunate the way that my journey has been, that I have chosen races that are coincidentally Western States qualifiers, although there's definitely been a few where I've thought I need to do something to get that, but I've been quite fortunate that I've never done a race just to have a Western States qualifier. But I just think if it's at any point you think it might be your dream, then you need to start the ball rolling, because it's just going to get harder and harder. I think even last year the tickets in the actual hat I'd pretty much doubled from the year before. So although I had 64 tickets in the draw, I think there was 70,000 in the hat. So even then, like, the chances of my name getting pulled out were still quite low. And I think, the odds are just going to be stacked against, like, harder as years go by. So even if you think in 10, 15 years time, I might want to do Western States. And I always think if you do put your name in the hat and it gets drawn, trust the universe, it's your time to do it. So yeah, I think if you've got a qualifier and it's a dream of yours at some point, then you need to start thinking about it now. It's just going to get harder and harder.
Yeah, and that I think is, I'm not saying it as a downside, but it potentially is the downside of Western States picking up more kudos and awareness because of the beauty of the race. I was waiting for the Trust the Universe bit, so thank you for delivering that. I was waiting on that.
Thanks. Yeah. I said that to Fee Pascal when she got her golden ticket, when she was unsure about whether she should do it, and I messaged her and I was like, trust the universe.
She did brilliant.
And the universe certainly delivered for her.
Definitely. When you said at the start around about 300 runners, or you said something around about were first timers.
Yeah.
And for a lot of people, for a lot of reasons, it's a one and done, unless invited back because they're in the top 10 or whatever.
Yeah.
And I suppose, like, then it's making way for somebody else to have a shot. I've had my year. You're not going to start again. You've already said that's you're going to start. Yeah. Do you then start from scratch with your tickets? Yeah. You're blank.
Your tickets have been used up in the last draw. So yeah, I think, but I do think things like Western States, like people who are there, it's not an entry level 100 miler. So the people who are there are really experienced. They've had years of qualifying races. They've got miles in the bank. They know how to crew. They know how to race. So people who are there are like really experienced runners. So it's a different level when you get there. Like, everyone is honed and toned and ready. They're totally so I do think the class of people that they attract to the race is different from anything I've ever seen as well, because people are super experienced.
Yeah, there's nobody wet behind the lugs.
No, absolutely. And I just think it's years of qualifying races that they've been doing, or years of running to get there. So it's not like you can run and then take a couple of years off, or just do a couple of races here and there. But I do think that also, like, the qualifying thing is just I can't think of the word that I want to use here. Like there's a lot of races in there, like you just have to finish to be able to qualify for the race. But I do think there's a lot of people who might be able to qualify who probably wouldn't be able to do it within the cutoffs, because the cutoffs quite early on are quite tight as well. So I do think that I know things like Lakeland and West Highland Way and all the Centurion races, they're all qualifiers. But I think like you need to be able to do a sub 24 West Highland Way or a sub 24 Centurion race to be able to do Western States in 30 hours.
That's a good
I think
advice
it's
as
like,
well.
I think it's not just qualifying. I think you need to be there pretty good shape to be able to do it within that time frame. Because I was like surprised, like the people who are coming through in 29, 30 hours, you know, they look like pretty fast, pretty experienced. And, you know, they're not there walking, do you know? I mean, these people are still running. I was still running and I did it in 27 hours. So it's not like people are death marching it into the end. You know, the cutoffs are really quite tight, especially earlier on. I was getting into some of the checkpoints and I was like, God, that is actually quite tight. And I'm taking it easy because I just wanted to. At the beginning, I was taking it easy. It got a whole lot harder. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to pretend that I just took it easy and enjoyed the route. But yeah, the cutoffs are quite tight, and it is quite an ordeal to be able to do it within that time frame. It's nothing like anything we've got in the UK. There's far too many challenges that are thrown at you that are not anything you would experience here.
Yeah. A few questions to finish up. And this one, I was going to ask the question, I'm going to say some more before I actually answer the question. The question is, who inspires Debbie Martin Consani? But before we get to that, you, in my opinion, are responsible for inspiring many, many people for all the things that you've done, Debbie. And thank you very much for doing them all and for sharing with us. I think you're one of our first high-profile guests that we had on the podcast. And I remember back 5 years ago now, we had the conversation about dream races, and Western States was one of these things you mentioned then. And here we are, 5 years later, completed it, mate. One of them, right? So it's quite been brilliant, and you have inspired us, and you've inspired lots more people, certainly through the Wild Hearts as well. It's something that's grown, man, it's just been crazy. But who inspires Debbie Martin Consani?
Yeah, I think a lot of people, and it's changed over the years. I think during Western States, the three people that inspired me the most were Gillian and Catherine, because I just followed them on the spine race. And, you know, we've all seen Gillian's little videos that she was sending to people, and it was like the ultimate demise of Gillian McGail and her feet. And I know Catherine was having a really tough time out there, and obviously I've worked with them over the last few months. So I found what they put themselves through very inspirational, like watching Gillian finish and her pushing the cut-offs. And, you know, when you listen to her story about how she was almost pulled out and she was just like having absolutely none of it. And, you know, I just kept thinking about things like when my feet were sore, I was like, they're not as sore as Gillian's. Gillian had that pretty much from day one. So yeah, Gillian and Catherine, following like Jo McKnight doing the West Highland Way and seeing her videos as well. So I just thought there was three women that had the week before had definitely didn't have the race that they trained for or the race that they planned, but come hell or high water, they were going through everything to get there to the finish. And yeah, I just kept thinking about those three.
Brilliant. Awesome. I love that. Thank you very much for sharing that. I'm just going to say Fleecy Web. There you go. That's this week's advert done.
I didn't need the Fleecy Web. Yeah. But yeah, there's been a lot of chat about Fleecy Web, that's for sure.
It's just been bad water this just past few days as well. Were you able to keep up?
It's been so yeah, I mean, it's hard to track that race because it's like a mobile death spot for pretty much most of it. But yeah, it was pretty exciting. I was following the three Brits that I know as well. So Laura, who you had on the podcast, you're gonna have to get her back on now that she's done 4. She's smashed it out the park. Ali Young, who I ran in the GB team, finished third, an amazing time. And David Bowen, who I run with sometimes when I'm in London, he knocked it out of the park as well. So it's been it's quite a phenomenal race. It's hard to follow, but I've been following what I can on social media. I saw quite a few white leggings out there. Yeah, they know it.
Trailblazer, there you go.
They know it. There was
Wait
one
till
guy
John
that
does
actually his outfit looked 10 times worse than mine. And he's like my hero already. He was going all in the full body white stuff. But yeah, it's great to follow that one for sure.
And now, Debs, you're back in like the routine, kinda. You know, you're out on a sunny London morning, back to standard practice, so to speak. Have you set anything on the horizon? Is it just a case of wait and see what comes now?
Yeah, I'm not making any big plans just now. I'm still at that stage where I never want to do another ultra again, although I keep looking at other things briefly. I need to sort my shit out. I can't go into another race spewing. So if there's anyone listening that wants to give me some advice or help on what I can do, the last few ultras I've done, I've had absolutely no joy in the experience, and therefore it's just hard to do that when you know that it's just basically dragging your knuckles because you've got no energy because you can't keep anything down. So yeah, I want to get my 6 stars, Stephen, so I can milk it to death like you. So that's one of my plans. I would love to get my 100 marathons. I think I'm on 70 something just now, which includes ultras. But I've never been one to just do marathons for the sake of accumulating marathons to join the 100 Marathon Club. But it's always been like a distant goal of mine. It's kind of right up there with the Monroes. I'll do it at some point, but I'm not in any rush to do it. And I don't want to do races just for the sake of ticking boxes. But I think at some point in my life, that would be a good goal for me to achieve. I'd like to do that before I'm 60. There you go. With 10 years to do
it.
I've got the rest of my life. I want to do it before I'm 60.
What did you say?
But I'll just take forever and do that and not have any time frame. But I want to do it before I'm 60.
Yeah. Did you see Bob Becker, who's 80, who finished Badwater?
Amazing.
I don't know if you saw his footage from 2 years ago where he was like crawling and missed the cutoff and he was bent over and people were, it was a really hard watch. But he came back this year, he's 80 and just finished Badwater with like 3 hours to spare.
Brilliant.
That's going to be me. I aspire to be that person.
Yeah, and these are the things. It is ordinary people doing extraordinary things, you know. So, and if you want,
thing about.
Sorry, on you go, Debbie.
Sorry. I just got quite excited because it was like a beautiful moment. At the Western States race briefing, obviously they bring up all the superstars. And so they had all the women came up and it was fantastic to see them all there in the flesh. And then they brought up the men. So it was like the Killians and the Rods and Seths and David Roche, everyone was up there. But in the lineup, they had the guy who was 80, who was running the race. So he's just standing up there and, you know, he was like Vincent and he gave him a little fist punch and he's like, that's for good luck. And I just thought that was such a beautiful touch.
That is lovely. Great way to wrap this one up. However, one thing we haven't spoke about, here for the women's race, still going strong.
Sorry, say that?
Here for the women's race, a movement, still going strong.
Oh, it's amazing. It's just they've grown so much. And I think it was also pretty exciting to be part of the 28%, which is the highest they've ever had at Western States for female participation, which was pretty cool. But yeah, that's huge there. And I think it was great to see everyone doing that. But I haven't watched all the media coverage of the race, although I was pretty gutted not to be sitting watching it on YouTube because it looked pretty exciting. But I think at some point I would like to whiz through some of the coverage in the race. But I think I think they could have done a little bit better covering the women's race. But it might just be because the men are coming through first and then they move and stuff. But it's a really great movement. And I got to meet Corinne as well. I've got my picture with him.
Brilliant.
And I got to run with Ben from Death Cab for Cutie
I heard
for
that.
quite a few miles.
Yeah, we heard that. That was brilliant. That was brilliant.
Obviously, in my true style, he was behind me and he's chatting away to me, and he's like, he kept calling me Glasgow because he found out I was from Glasgow. So the whole time he's like, "Hi Glasgow, how you doing, Glasgow?" And I was like, "So what takes you to Glasgow then?" And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm a musician." And I was like, "Okay, that's that guy. Lovely guy, so nice."
Just on a world tour, mate. Just
Exactly.
that brings us to the music question. Do you have a song? Do you have a song, Sean?
I think it's got to be Death Cab for Cutie. I will follow you into the dark.
Brilliant. How appropriate is that? Awesome. Thank you. But I know time is tight for all of us today. So thank you very much, Debbie. I really like that song.
I really appreciate it.
Thank you very much for sharing your story with us. It has been a journey.
Thank you so much for asking.
We've all been on, and I love watching your daughter. You did the hard bit, but we get the wee bit to share in the glory. So I'll hand over to Stephen to say cheerio. On you go, Stephen.
Debs, well done again on achieving that lifetime goal of yours. Like John said, 5 years ago, you said it was on your bucket list, and here we are. I know you'll be adding new things to that bucket list, and John and I both really appreciate you coming and speaking to us about it today so quickly after it as well, getting the full sort of debrief from you, and our listeners will really appreciate it as well. So thanks so much, and like I say, a huge congratulations on
Thanks,
finishing 100.